In the late 19th century, a sweeping Hindu reform movement began taking shape under the guidance of Swami Dayananda Saraswati. He was heavily inspired by his guru, Swami Shraddhanand of Mathura, to strip away centuries of orthodox tradition. This push for reform crystallized into a formal organization on April 10, 1875, right here in the streets of Bombay. 2 years later, the movement shifted its operational center north. In Lahore, the core principles of the organization were formally settled and codified. The intellectual engine driving this expansion was Dayananda himself. He authored the movement's central ideological text, Satyarth Prakash, or The Light of Truth, in Hindi, alongside a massive volume of direct commentaries on the Vedas. By shifting its geographic base to the Punjab and anchoring itself in rigorous, highly accessible textual output, the movement successfully established a centralized nexus for Hindu reform. Looking at this morphological breakdown of the Sanskrit roots for their name, we can understand their exact mission. Arya refers to an individual possessing noble, virtuous, and progressive characteristics. Samaj denotes an organized community. Together, they form a community of individuals holding themselves to high moral character. Adding the official motto to this linguistic foundation gives us Krinvanto Vishwam Aryam. Translated directly, it means make the world noble. To achieve that global nobility, the movement relied on a single, uncompromising axiom: strict belief in the absolute infallibility of the Vedas. The movement positioned the Vedas as the sole repository of all true knowledge. Any later texts claiming primary authority were strictly rejected. Because these ancient texts contained the ultimate truth, the paramount theological duty of all members was to relentlessly study and teach the Vedas. Pacing up slightly, by isolating the Vedas as the only infallible source of truth, the movement systematically bypassed centuries of accumulated Hindu orthodoxy, stripping away the theological authority of later traditions. This structural map displays how that single axiom expanded into 10 strict principles in Lahore, creating a rigid operational architecture for the society. The first 2 nodes establish that God is the primeval cause of all genuine knowledge. This creator is defined with specific attributes: truth consciousness, unborn, infinite, eternal, and crucially, formless. Because God is formless, God alone deserves worship and never takes the form of physical avatars. The third principle locks in the core axiom, declaring the Vedas infallible and making their study a mandatory duty. Principles 4 and 5 demand a constant readiness to imbibe truth and forsake untruth, requiring that all actions be strictly governed by dharma, or righteous duty. The 6th principle scales this individual duty outward, setting the primary objective of the society to achieve physical, spiritual, and social prosperity for the entire world. 7 and 8 dictate that all conduct must be guided by love and dharma, explicitly mandating the destruction of ignorance, avidya, and the active promotion of knowledge, vidya. Finally, principles 9 and 10 demand that individuals prioritize collective prosperity over their own and abide by rules of social benefit while retaining personal freedom. With these 10 nodes locked in place, the movement effectively replaced a sprawling system of orthodox mysticism with a highly structured text-based rationalism. Because Principle 2 defined God as strictly formless, the movement explicitly rejected idol worship, known as Murti Puja, along with any practice of animal sacrifice. Their demand for logic led to a complete rejection of mysticism and fatalism. Astrology, magic, horoscopes, and beliefs in ghosts or spirits were thrown out entirely. They also dismantled post-Vedic rituals. Practices aimed at honoring or feeding deceased ancestors, like Shraddha and Tarpan, were dismissed. This strict adherence to the Vedas extended to their reading of other famous texts. The Puranas were rejected entirely as religious authority. The Ramayana and Mahabharata were recategorized purely as historical legends, and figures like Ram and Krishna were redefined not as supreme beings or divine avatars, but strictly as ideal humans, Yogiraj. The logical filter was absolute. If a religious practice or a text could not be proven by the original Vedas, it was systematically stripped of divine authority. Returning to the original texts revealed that birth-based caste systems were not Vedic. Consequently, the Arya Samaj actively dismantled untouchability and caste discrimination, often working alongside allied groups like the Jat Pat Todak Mandal. They instituted strict emancipation protocols. Shudras and women were suddenly authorized to wear the Yajnopavita, the sacred thread previously reserved exclusively for upper caste men. While the thread served as a visible sign of status, they coupled it with the right to study the Vedas, breaking centuries of caste gatekeeping. The gender reforms accelerated from there, with the organization aggressively promoting women's education and launching campaigns to secure women's voting rights. They institutionalized widow remarriage. They didn't just advocate for it in theory. Members modeled the behavior by bringing widow brides into their own families. This egalitarian stance translated into heavy humanitarian relief protocols. During the 1905 Kangar earthquake, the Samaj funneled targeted donations specifically toward the protection of vulnerable widows and orphans. Even everyday cultural interactions were modified. The term namaste, which was not the standard greeting, was popularized by Arya Samajis as a universal way to acknowledge others. By strictly adhering to an ancient text, the Arya Samaj paradoxically engineered a new platform for social disruption that challenged nearly every major pillar of 19th century Hindu orthodoxy. To scale this ideology and bypass British colonial education, the movement needed physical infrastructure. Between 1869 and 1873, Dayananda established Gurukuls, Vedic schools where, as seen here with students studying under a banyan tree, boys and girls received separate educations. The educational scale rapidly expanded. In 1886, follower Lala Hansraj founded the Dayanand Anglo Vedic College in Lahore, visible here teeming with students and bicycles. 15 years later, in 1901, Swami Shraddhanand established the Gurukul Kangri, further solidifying the institutional network. With infrastructure in place, leaders like Shraddhanand and Pandit Lekram launched the Shuddhi Movement. This initiated formal proselytization into Hinduism, aiming to actively reconvert individuals from other faiths. Introducing active reconversion drove a sharp increase in antagonism between local Muslim and Hindu communities, injecting a new proselytizing logic into regional politics. Within decades, the Arya Samaj had transitioned from a theoretical philosophy into a self-sustaining educational and demographic engine. But strict ideological boundaries naturally create fractures. Internally, a massive split occurred in 1893 over vegetarianism. The Punjab Arya Samaj divided into the meat-refraining Mahatma faction and the meat-eating cultured party. Externally, frictions flared in Bengal. Swami Dayananda had closely studied the Brahmo Dharma and interacted deeply with the leaders of the Adi Brahmo Samaj, like Debendranath Tagore and Rajnarayan Bose. The alliance broke down over the core axiom. The Arya Samaj demanded the Vedas be treated as divine revelation, while the Brahmo Samaj explicitly rejected their authority, viewing them as inferior works. In the Punjab region, friction emerged over language. The Arya Samaj strictly promoted the use of Hindi and actively discouraged the speaking of Punjabi. This linguistic stance generated profound tension with the Sikh community, represented by the Shiromani Akali Dal. The conflict peaked immediately following independence, during the Punjabi Suba movement, which demanded a dedicated Punjabi-speaking state. The movement's uncompromising adherence to its first principles made it a powerful engine for reform, inherently generating intense friction with orthodoxies and political allies. The British Empire actively monitored this friction. In his book, Indian Unrest, British observer Valentine Chirol characterized the Satyarth Prakash as hollowing out the roots of British rule, explicitly labeling Dayananda Saraswati the father of Indian unrest. Despite colonial monitoring, the movement leapt borders. Arya Samaj missionaries embedded themselves in British and Dutch colonies, establishing robust chapters from South Africa to Mauritius, Suriname, and here, with diaspora members in Fiji. This global data map highlights the expansion's sheer scale. By 1947, society members numbered 2 million. Today, it tracks 10 million worldwide, with 8 million in India. Overlaying modern infrastructure reveals a massive footprint, operating over 1,000 colleges and 10,000 schools globally. By engineering a strict ontological realignment based solely on the Vedas, the Arya Samaj executed a sociological reconstruction that left Hinduism with a globally distributed, institution-backed network of reform.